Hello, welcome to Capitol Journal. I'm Randy Scott. Todd Stacy has the day off. Coming up, news on crime fighting in one major Alabama city. Also, good news for the state's workforce, classroom teachers, and keeping an eye on healthcare. But first, today's news. Montgomery Mayor Stephen Reed is taking steps to fight crime in the capital city. He named a new interim police chief and a special advisor to the mayor. One-time Montgomery policeman and former chief of police for Alabama State University, James Grayboys, is the new interim chief. Former Mobile chief of police Lawrence Batiste IV will be that special advisor.
Before his tenure at ASU, he was a 20-year veteran of the Montgomery Police Department, where he held several leadership positions within MPD's patrol, juvenile, and community-oriented policing divisions, receiving both the Medal of Valor and the Medal of Merit. He'll begin his duties on July 15th, 2024.
Montgomery's a wonderful town. I love this town. I love the police department. The men and the women there, ever since I first started, have done everything they could to sacrifice and work for the welfare of the people of the city. They are a part of the city. They are a part of this community. And so I'm really humbled and honored to be here to accept this. I vow I'm going to do everything within my power and everything within my ability to leave no stone unturned, to marshal every resource available to go after these offenders, to go after people who want to make you unsafe, and to create community partnerships to have us work together.
It is indeed an honor to have the opportunity to come serve in this city in the capacity that I've been asked to serve in. I don't bring with me a silver bullet, but what I do bring with me is the wisdom and the understanding of knowing that the men and women that are part of your team are your greatest assets, and you have to make sure that they are engaged and part of the process. And as well as getting them engaged, is engaging the community, working to develop and improve our trust within the community and our trust within our department.
Mayor Reed says a search for a full-time police chief continues. The big debate between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump drew big numbers to hear what both men thought were important issues for voters. One item, jobs and the economy, did take center stage. But here in Alabama, good news on the job front is already happening. Secretary Fitzgerald Washington of the State Department of Labor unveiled the good news.
We announced that the unemployment rate dropped to 3%, and that's 0.1% over the month, while the labor force participation rate remained unchanged at 57.7%. But right now is a really good time in our state's economy.
Lawmakers passed key education proposals during this year's regular session. Two bills dealing with 2% pay raises for teachers and the CHOOSE Act giving parents up to $7,000 to pay for private or public schooling are gaining momentum.
If you look at our society today, everything is about customization and flexibility. And yet we want to have the same education model we've had in place over 100 years. And that's the education model is changing, and parents are demanding more and are expecting. And this would give the parent the ability to take their child and put them into a school situation that might be better for that child. Then this past session, we made Alabama's starting teacher pay the highest of the surrounding states. So if you now look at any model that looks at, compares teacher salaries around the Southeast, we are at the top.
I saw it affect my staff really in two different ways. One was just the validation from that body to know that they wanted to empower teachers more and show their appreciation. That wasn't lost on any of the teachers.
The 4th of July holiday weekend is a week away, and if you have plans to hit the state roadways, preparing for heavy traffic is a must. There are plans in place to ease traffic congestion in the coming years. Capitol Journal's Jeff Sanders has this story.
If you're a regular traveler along Alabama's interstates, then you're aware that congestion can cause a quick trip to turn into hours of being stuck in traffic. That's especially true for parts of Interstate 65.
the fact that we have 8 million visitors coming to our, coastal beaches every year. And plus the fact our state's growing and it's our main corridor, connecting, North Alabama to South Alabama.
Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth has made expansion of I-65 a top priority, repeatedly posting on social media the traffic he has experienced when returning home to North Alabama.
And I think what got us in this problem was not having a plan in the past. And we've got to make sure that, what I want to do is have a plan, and we're putting it together to solve this to where and hopefully in, 8 to 10 years, we'll have 65 completely 3-laned, from the state line, to the coast. And maybe in some areas, there might even need to be 4-lane.
Accomplishing that goal falls to the Alabama Department of Transportation. Tony Harris with ALDOT credits the passage of the Rebuild Alabama Act in 2019 to adding an enormous amount of new funding to highway projects.
We're able now to focus on adding additional roadway miles in rural areas to reduce congestion, on interstates in urban areas to reduce congestion.
But Harris says reducing congestion, especially along I-65, is paramount during holidays like the upcoming 4th of July weekend.
But on 65 specifically, we will have completed a section of widening from Alabaster to Pelham, and the next section south of Alabaster down to Calera that people have been waiting for, and frankly, it's going to be one of the most expensive short duration widening projects in state history.
Reporting from Montgomery, I'm Jeff Sanders for Capital Journal.
Thursday, June 27th, is observed as being National HIV Testing Day. Officials are raising awareness of this disease and encouraging people to know their status by getting tested.
HIV and AIDS is still very relevant within America. According to CDC, in 2021, an estimated 1.2 million people are HIV positive, with about 13% of those not being aware of their status. In the South is more prevalent. About half of all new infections are diagnosed in the South. Our message for people is to, first of all, know your status to get diagnosed. For those that are positive, we encourage people to get treatment. For those that are not positive, we encourage preventative interventions such as PrEP, which is a daily pill or injection that prevents the spread of HIV.
Alabama Commissioner of Agriculture Rick Pate held the 21st annual Tomato Sandwich Lunch on Wednesday. The idea is to highlight local grown state products and the support these items bring to Alabama farmers.
It's just a celebration of homegrown tomatoes, homegrown everything. We've got sweet corn here, all the other stuff donated, whether it's Bluebell or Milo's or Golden Flake. All of our Alabama companies just stepping up and supporting us. But yeah, we just got to get that message across. If you can buy local, the average food comes from Mexico or California, Arizona, been on a truck 17, 18 days. It probably ripened while it was in transport. This is so much tastier, so much better for you, and it helps our local farmers. So just really trying to encourage people to buy local.
Sweet Grown Alabama is our state's nonprofit agricultural branding program. We have an online searchable database where consumers can go on and find products that they're looking for, and just like tomatoes that they're serving in there, corn that they're serving in there, all of these wonderful things are grown in our state of Alabama. So we serve those, and we have tons of farmers out here at our pop-up farmers market just trying to get out in front of the consumer, telling them that we've got these wonderful things in our state.
I am a farmer by trade, senator secondhand, I reckon. And in the future I'll announce I'm running for Ag Commissioner. We have really been traveling the state already, going all over it. Was in Hale County last night. I'll be in North Alabama tomorrow night. So we have 2 or 3 events every week. But we support all this like we support everything else with farmers.
Coming up in the studio will be Montgomery County Sheriff Derrick Cunningham, Montgomery County District Attorney Daryl Bailey, Secretary Fitzgerald Washington of the State Department of Labor, and Dr. Scott Harris, the State Health Officer. Stay tuned.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts. Keep up with what's happening with Capital Journal.
Fighting crime in the state of Alabama in various cities has taken an uptick lately. There are two different types of agencies fighting crime, one from a legal standpoint dealing with prosecution, and then there are the law enforcement officers themselves. Joining us right now is the leader of one such agency here in Montgomery County Sheriff Derrick Cunningham. Sir, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Randy. Thanks for inviting me. This is great. Anytime we're given an opportunity to be able to come out and talk to the community, it means the world.
Let's face it, because as of late, your job, the Montgomery Police Department, and other law enforcement agencies, your job hasn't been easy at all.
No, not right now. I mean, you can see with the uptick in all the violent crime, compiled with the other issues we deal with, from domestics to drugs. I mean, so our job is getting harder and harder every single day.
Have you, in your career of being a law enforcement officer, have you ever seen things the way they are now, sir?
No, you know, and that's what's so shocking. You know, you've been in law enforcement, 35 plus years, and now you're starting to see things that you're shaking your head like, for real, that really happened in our community, right here in our neighborhood, right here in our state. So now I can literally say that nothing really shocks me as it relates to crime and as it relates to the things that we witness on our jobs.
And I'm sure you witness a lot, because there have been cases over the last week or so. You had a mass shooting in Montgomery. Mm-hmm. You've had other shootings around the city and around the county as well too. Mm-hmm. It keeps you and your staff and your deputies on their toes.
Quite a bit. And you got to look at the number of calls that we get from residents saying they heard gunshots, they heard shots fired. And the thing is, out in the county, it's legal. People shoot guns out in the county in the rural parts, but now you're talking about inside the city limits. And you're talking about it's something that I guess our young people feel like it's all right to do, and they don't realize what goes up must come down. And what comes out the end of that barrel, you can't wish it back, you can't hope it back, it's gone. And what it hits, it hits.
Let's talk about that, because there are a huge number of weapons, firearms, out in the community now. Dare I say more than there's been in recent history. That has to be also a part of the problem as well.
Well, now it's getting younger and younger. Back in the day, you stop a car, you stop a person walking, you may run across a firearm every now and then. But now, just about every stop, you got to have in the back of your mind that person is going to be armed with the firearm.
You lead a big department of men and women on the department's force. Are they telling you anything of their concerns about what they see, what they hear while they're out doing their patrols?
Well, normally, every time they go out and they make a stop or they make an arrest of a person who's armed and that's not supposed to be armed, normally those are ones that you're always scared of, because you don't know what he or she's going to do. They know for a fact they ain't supposed to have a weapon, and they know if you discover that weapon on them while doing your interview or while you're talking with that person, then that situation may get deadly. So those incidents are the ones that are pretty much more alarming. Law-abiding citizen, they got a weapon, they can say, hey, officer, I got a gun on me and blah, 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 and they'll be able to handle that situation and you feel more at ease. But those that, oh, I ain't got nothing, and then come to find out that person has a warrant, and then you're trying to detain that person, and then you discover a weapon on that person, those are the ones that are your scary moments. And those are the ones that that makes you think twice about make sure that you did everything right, because you're sitting there thinking, man, I didn't know you still had a gun, because when you stop that person, you're doing an eye search, you're watching for bulges and things of this nature, but a lot of times you don't know. I've seen instances where a person that was heavyweight had a weapon hidden on his body, and you didn't even know that. But because that person was so heavy that he had a way of hiding the weapon on him, and you couldn't discover it. So you got to be very careful, and you got to always continue to wash your hands. And you got to always tell them, hey, keep your hands where I can see them. Don't put your hands in your pocket. Don't do this. Just keep your hands out so that we see each other and we're all right.
Now, we cover, of course, the legislature here, and I've seen yourself and other members of law enforcement, other sheriffs from around the county come to talk to lawmakers. You were once the head of the Sheriff's Association here in the state?
Yes, I'm past president of the Alabama Sheriff's Association.
Meaning you have reached out to them to talk about various issues. And if I recall, one of those issues dealt with the pistol permit notion, which has passed and is now in effect. You still concerned about that, sir?
Well, since it's passed, now I've gotten more to making sure that I'm educating my people on the things to look for and the things that how to be safe. So, the legislation is here. Now we got to make sure that we're doing everything in our power to make sure that our people are trained and have the tools that they need. I've also went to the effect of when we purchased one handheld detectors and issued them to some of my patrol people, my warrant cars and things of this nature. So it's just not you doing a pat down. You can at least run that wand across the person's body and their clothing to be able to get an indication if they got metal on them and things of this nature. So we as leaders had to look at what other tools that can we arm our people with to be able to make sure that they're safe and that the person they're dealing with is not armed at the time. So we looked at those measures and we had to implement some things.
You mentioned earlier, but we talked about more and more guns are out there and more are finding their ways to young people. Is there a message for people that maybe supply young folks with guns or sell them guns, or just to be on the lookout for that younger generation who may have guns, may not be ready to use them, that may need to be, tutored, serviced, or told about the seriousness? Like you said, once that bullet comes out, you can't put it back.
And that's some of the things that we had to do. We had to go back to the old school days of community policing, where you have the Eddie Eagles and the little mascots going around telling our young kids don't play with guns. If you happen to find a gun laying in the bushes or somewhere, the rule of stop, don't touch, leave the area until an adult. We got to go back to educating our kids that weapons are dangerous. And you're starting to see 3-year-olds pick up weapons that their family members had in their houses, playing with it, and we're losing them. I mean, they're shooting themselves, playing with a gun. So we got to get back to the old school days of telling parents, it's great if you want to have a weapon in your possession or in your house, put your gun lock on it, lock it in the safe, keep it out of the reach of your kids, and make sure that if you got young juveniles that are living with you, they're teens, keeping them away from it. Because right now, you got so many young people that think it's cool to carry a gun. I mean, I go to schools and talk, and first thing you start talking about guns is everybody's strapped. You better be strapped because somebody may do something to you. But that's the talk of our young people. And sometimes you gotta sit still, be quiet, listen, because you learn a lot. Just by closing this and listening through your ears, you learn a lot what they're dealing with. Peer pressure is a big thing. Back in the day, we had peer pressure. People call you names, people want to bully you. Now, bullying and peer pressure really turned to our young people picking up firearms to defend themselves. And one of the worst things you can do is have a scared person arming themselves with no knowledge about a firearm, and they're supposed to be protecting themselves from possible bullies, and they can't deal with the peer pressure. So we got to have those close conversations with our kids, and it takes us in law enforcement as well. I go to schools all the time and we talk about the dangers of firearms and things of this nature, but at the same time, that conversation has to be carried over to the homes, and parents has to have that conversation as well, because what you don't want is your child to be so scared to go to school or be so scared of people at school or to walk home from school that he or she is trying to arm themselves. Because then you start coming up with firearms that are missing out of the house. Now you're starting to see a wide range of cars being broken into, because everybody know people got guns and they're going to leave their weapon in their car, and which is a no-no. And hopefully people are seeing this large rash of car burglaries, and they're starting to rethink that. You know, if you're going to carry a weapon, take it in your house at night. Why leave it in your car? Why leave your car unlocked knowing that you got a weapon in your car? Because right now, all they do is go around and check doorknobs. Every night, they go around and just pop doors until they find one open, look through the glove box, look under the seat, look through your little hidden compartments that you think you got hid, and they're getting these weapons out. So we got to be mindful about what our young people are doing and why they're arming themselves, and then at least be there so that we can help them.
Well, Sheriff, I know we're going to keep an eye on this because this is a continuing story going on, especially here in Montgomery, but like you said, other cities and counties throughout the state as well, the whole country for that fact. So I want to say thank you for coming by and joining us. Thank you for your service, and as always, do be careful.
Thank you.
And Capital Journal will be right back.
You're watching Alabama Public Television.
People across this country are concerned with various things leading into this election: crime and punishment, health care, and also the elections themselves. But it's crime that has gotten a lot of press lately, and here in Montgomery, it's no exception. Joining me now to talk about what's being done to fight crime is District Attorney Daryl Bailey of the 15th Circuit here in Alabama. Mr. Bailey, thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
You've been doing this for a number of years. Have you ever seen the climate the way it is now, sir?
You know, I really haven't. It seems like it's getting worse and worse, but what really alarms me is that the perpetrators are getting younger and younger, and that's what I'm noticing more of.
Very troubling, would you say?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it's also the fact that sometimes you have youth who come in from other areas into Montgomery and vice versa and commit these incidents.
Yeah, we've seen some recent examples of that in some of the cases that we've had. So we've had some come in from Prattville and had some from Dallas County. So yeah, Montgomery is not the only jurisdiction that is fighting this battle. Other counties and cities are doing the same.
Would you say it's a matter of it's summertime and there's a lot of people who have nothing to do and sometimes troubles abound, because if your mind isn't occupied, you're looking for stuff to do?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons that lead to the crime that we are seeing. You know, one of the major factors I believe is happening is that we don't have parents who are parenting anymore. And I'm not blaming it all on parents. There are parents that do everything they can. There's some single parents out there that do a wonderful job and just their kids just turn out bad. I get that. But what I'm seeing is a lot of parents who are not putting in the effort to parent their kids. Maybe they don't know how. Maybe they weren't taught. I don't know the reason. But it's very easy sometimes to see why a child has turned out the way they have. One of the first things I do on a crime scene when I go out to a homicide is when I find out the name of the person who's been killed and the name of the person they suspect that did it, I always pull up their social media before anybody else knows these people were deceased or accused of a crime. And one of the things I've noticed when I pull up the social media is that, especially among the perpetrators, you'll see them flashing gang signs or pictures with guns and doing things on social media that they shouldn't be doing. And that if their parents would just take a look at their social media, they would know that their child is into things that they shouldn't be into. Things like parents not looking through their child's things in their rooms and, looking for guns or drugs, making sure you know who your children are hanging out with. those things are not happening as they once were. And I see so many parents who will respond to a crime scene or come into court and they're just tore up. I mean, they're devastated. They're crying and they're begging for mercy. And, you know, and I just look at them and just shake my head. It's too late at that point, way too late. You know, if your child's is deceased, it's obviously too late for them. If they're going to prison for the rest of their life, it's too late for them. And the time that you should have been involved and you should have cared was years earlier. And there's so many resources in Montgomery, there are resources all across our state that parents can take advantage of, but unfortunately parents aren't doing that. So that's part of the problem. I think the legislature, to be honest with you, is also part of the problem. There's some good common sense gun laws that, you know, I've had a gun bill up before the legislature for the last 3 years that will not come out. And it's dealing with creating mandatory time for those who use guns in violent offenses. I think everybody can get behind that, but unfortunately we can't get that passed. There's some federal laws that are very similar that make a difference, but unfortunately the feds do very little to help us in Alabama to prosecute these cases. They take some cases, but they're not doing a majority of the cases that need to be prosecuted. So that leaves it to state prosecutors. And then the third thing is, you know, we need judges to actually put these individuals behind bars when we do convict them of these violent offenses. And one thing that is happening, at least in Montgomery, is because there's a lot of attention being paid to the crime and the rise in crime, and a lot of our state officials live in Montgomery, or at least are here a majority of the time, is that we are starting to see people say, what can we do to help? What resources can we provide? And, you know, it's about time, because even though, you know, I point out that the criminals have become younger, the crime problem has been festering for a long time. I mean, you can go back and look at my comments 10 years ago. I told people that Montgomery was under siege with violent crime. This is not something that's just happened in the last year or two. So there's a lot of issues that need to be dealt with.
We have law enforcement officers, police, the sheriff's department, who have officers on the street who are handling that aspect of the justice system from that aspect. But those who work behind the scenes, like your office, it's tough for you as well, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. And you know, it's really tough because we are just similar to police officers. We're having trouble attracting prosecutors to the prosecution arena. There's a shortage of lawyers, believe it or not, and law schools are actually trying to steer people away from being prosecutors. You know, they're really, law schools, even in our state, are steering people more to doing public defender work or doing some other type of work as opposed to being prosecutors. And that's a shame. But, you know, each one of my prosecutors, you know, carry anywhere from 200 to 300. Some of them I've had at times, just because of shortages, have up to 600 cases. And that's not good. That's not good at all. You know, we formed a violent crime unit in Montgomery. The idea was we were going to have them handle any violent crime. And I quickly realized, you know, when we had 5 people just doing that it was too much. So now all they handle is murders, and each one of them we have a huge backlog in Montgomery right now. We have 300 murder cases pending in our circuit, waiting to go to trial, waiting to go to court. 300. That's you know, COVID and the shutdown of our court system, which I didn't agree with that for as long as we shut it down, but nevertheless it happened. That had a lot to do with it. We were already backlogged before COVID, but after, you know, COVID, we were really backlogged. And it's just impossible for us to catch up. I mean, we can try 2 or 3 cases during a jury trial week, which takes a lot of work, takes a lot of preparation, takes a lot of resources. But once we do that, at the end of the week, we may have had 3 homicides that week. So we're not gaining ground, if you see what I'm saying. You know, we have a limited number of jury trial weeks, and unfortunately we're having more murders than we're having jury trial weeks. It's just impossible for us to catch up. And we have some plans in place for that. We've asked the Supreme Court, and they have been gracious. They're helping us out by giving us 5 additional judges on a temporary basis to help us deal with that backlog. I've got a request coming up before our Montgomery County Commission just next week asking for additional prosecutors to be able to handle those new judges coming in. So, but you know, there's some argument over that. So we'll see next week if we're able to get those resources or not. But it's just all around a very difficult situation for law enforcement, for prosecutors, and for our community that has to put up with this violent crime.
Are you optimistic about a light, as they say, at the end of the tunnel, sir?
Not yet, but it will come. I am optimistic that we have been receiving a lot of calls from a lot of state officials. I've gotten calls anywhere from the governor, lieutenant governor's office. How can we help you? What can we do? I've gotten calls, even from the Supreme Court administration. Hey, what can the Supreme Court do to help you, or what can the judicial system do to help you, rather? So there are a lot of people now paying attention to what's going on in Montgomery, finally, and I hope that, along with maybe our next legislative session, we can make some progress.
Have you also worked with other DAs in Alabama about how to help each other with problems that it may have?
Oh yeah, we talk all the time. As a matter of fact, we were meeting last week, and we talk about the issues. And we're not alone. I mean, obviously there's some rural places in Alabama, a lot of rural places that don't have the crime problems that we have. And a lot of them, don't identify with what we're going through. But I mean, you got other folks like in, Madison County and Tuscaloosa and Mobile, obviously Jefferson County. My good friend Danny Carr is the DA there. We talk a lot about those issues. I'm also a board member of the National District Attorneys Association, and I meet with DAs all across the country who have similar issues. So we do look for best practices and ways that we can make things better and do a better job in representing our constituents and making our circuit safer. So that helps, and it does help you to know that you're not alone, that you're not the only city that's facing these type of struggles.
One more thing before you go. You mentioned before, and I saw you talking to other press media about a stern message for those who do commit crimes in this area. That message would be what, sir?
Oh yeah, so I'm extremely serious about it. If you commit a violent crime in Montgomery, my goal is to take you off the streets forever. You need to be separated from society. You have shown us, you have proven to us that you cannot operate with everybody else, that you cannot live with everybody else. So if you commit a violent crime, you need to be taken off the streets. And I tell these gang members in Montgomery, these people that are shooting and killing and robbing, keep messing with me, and I'm going to keep sending you to prison for the rest of your life. But I want to make sure that everybody in your listening audience knows that's not the complete answer. That is part of it. We've got to do that aggressive prosecution. But the answer really lies in being proactive on the front end and making sure these individuals don't even come into the criminal justice system to begin with, because we've poured resources into helping them stay out of the criminal justice system. And that's a lot more complicated, takes a lot more work, because government can't really tell people how to raise their children. But we need to at least try and get to young kids with mentors and educational programs and things to do. So conflict resolution is something we're missing big right now. We need to teach kids conflict resolution, because their first act is to shoot you rather than have a conversation with you, and we can't live like that.
He's District Attorney Daryl Bailey of the 15th Circuit Court District here in Alabama. Sir, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
And do be safe.
Absolutely.
And Capital Journal will continue.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page.
Jobs. Always a hot topic here in Alabama when it comes to bringing in new revenue and new businesses for the citizens of this state. But it's also a hot topic nationally. The upcoming elections, jobs are a hot topic between candidates. But also legislators here are talking about bringing in more jobs to help people in Alabama stay at work. Someone else who knows about jobs is here to join us today. That is Fitzgerald Washington, the Secretary of the Alabama Department of Labor. Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, before we get started with this conversation, there's some news that came out from your department dealing with a certain status here in the state of Alabama. What is that all about, sir?
We announced that the unemployment rate dropped to 3%, and that's 0.1% over the month, while the labor force participation rate remained unchanged at 57.7%. But right now is a really good time in our state's economy.
As I said, people are watching reports like this like a hawk, because they want to know, Are there jobs? How is Alabama doing? Is this going to adversely affect the state? Because if the state isn't working, the state isn't making forward progress. But as you just said, some progress is being made.
Yeah, Alabama's in a good position right now. There's not a week that doesn't go by where there's a job announcement, whether it's 50 jobs, 100 jobs, 600 jobs that are coming to the state of Alabama. And these companies would not decide to come and relocate here in the state if they didn't feel like we had the workforce to satisfy those job descriptions. And so Alabama is the perfect place to be right now.
And word gets around because those companies that do come here, some of their competitors are watching to see what's going on in Alabama and, for lack of better words, want to get a slice of that pie, are they not, sir?
Oh, no question about it. Again, our workforce is strong, our economy is strong. I give a lot of credit to Governor Ivey for having a strong vision in terms of making sure we retool our workforce to meet the challenges that are in front of us.
From getting that workforce ready, from children in high school who want to go into hands-on jobs as soon as they graduate, there's work being done on all levels: education, the professional job force, military even are getting involved. Do you think Alabama is well-rounded and getting even more well-rounded in terms of getting people prepared to be a part of that workforce?
Yeah, no question. If you look at the resources that we have in our shop at the Alabama Department of Labor, if folks have a barrier or disconnect in terms of how they can retool themselves and get into the workforce, we can provide those services for them. Again, right now that the state is in what I call rare air in terms of opportunity for people that are looking to get into the workforce. We've been creative with identifying certain sectors that traditionally have faced barriers to get into the workforce. We identify what those barriers are, knock those barriers down, and increase our labor force participation.
And you educate people about how to look out, what to look out for, how to look out for, and how to get in contact with your department if need be.
Yeah, no question. We manage at the Alabama Department of Labor 57 career centers statewide. We touch all 67 counties. So if there's someone that's looking to get into the workforce, we can make those recommendations. First, train them if they need training, and then move them right into the workforce.
57. That's a lot, covering, like you said, the entire state. You find out that sometimes people are surprised that they have this type of help around them and access to it, sir?
Oh, no question. We spend a whole lot of time in rural Alabama because sometimes folks don't know what's in our toolbox, nor they may not have access to get to the toolbox. And so we try to take state government for where we think the greatest need is.
Will there be any expanding of those offices around the state, or are you going to stick at 57 for right now?
Well, anywhere there's opportunity for us to make our services more convenient for the job seeker, we're going to certainly take a hard look at it. We know that all the major sectors in our workforce have rebounded really, really well since the pandemic. But there's also a couple of sectors that are still struggling to find help, and so that's where we come in. We make sure we educate both the employer and the job seekers on what the opportunities are, and that creates a really strong, healthy workforce environment.
I'm glad you mentioned the pandemic because it really changed the way people look at a lot of things, from going shopping to going to school to traveling. Mm-hmm. Finding work, finding jobs, another thing that has changed or morphed over the last few years as well, because the pandemic really got people to change their focus on how they approach things.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. We feel like the pandemic has caused a change and shift in people on how they look at work. More folks are looking for more flexible hours, as one example. But there's opportunity here. Alabama, again, is ripe for anybody that's looking to not just to get a job, but have a rewarding career.
From the coast to the midsection, from the east side of Alabama to the west side of Alabama to the northern part of Alabama, there are various projects coming to this state. Some related to the automotive industry, some related to tech, but there are, again, people are looking at Alabama as a prime place to set up shop, to do business. And they're looking for people in various parts for various things to do. Do you think that other states are also watching what's happening with Alabama and maybe going under a microscope to see what are they doing, how can we copy that?
Yeah, no question about it. I would have to say that Alabama is sort of the envy of a lot of states in terms of how we put our plan of attack on how we improve our workforce. And so we've got a lot of strong programs. Again, we identify barriers to get more people into the workforce. And so right now I would consider this is a job seekers market. We report that there's 2 jobs for every 1 person that we report is unemployed. And so we know that there's still challenges, but there's also a lot of opportunity there.
2 jobs for every 1 person. That is just, to me, mind-boggling that for every 1 person looking for work, you have 2 opportunities to find employment. It's something that people should know.
No question about it. And again, we're just so excited and so pleased with the trajectory with our workforce and our economy. Right now, there's 2.2 million people that have jobs right now, the highest ever in state's history. So that's really a major accomplishment, especially if you look at how we perform after the pandemic.
Like you said, the governor and other lawmakers, we'll get to that in a second, have been spearheading various programs to help trigger that. But you also want to make sure that you reach people, if they're students in high school, to start them thinking about what is next, what's in their future, because the future sometimes is right now, and they need to be prepared.
And we collaborate with a lot of groups in state government and in our workforce sector to make sure that we've got the right, let's just say in the K through 12 sector, make sure we got the right curriculum to satisfy and meet the jobs that are coming to the state. And so that collaboration is going to help us, again, fulfill the jobs for the next century.
Do businesses, I should say, who are coming into the state, do they ever contact your office to ask questions about what do we have to look forward to here in Alabama, or are there any spots that may fit our liking for what we want to set up here in the state?
Yes, we hear those questions a lot from all employers, both current employers and then also employers that are looking to relocate into the state. And so there's a series of questions that they ask, but the main question they ask, do we have a workforce that can satisfy the jobs that are coming to the state? And so I'm confident in our response when that question comes up that we do.
Now, just mentioned a second ago, states around us watching what Alabama does, and not just in football, but they're watching what Alabama does in terms of recruitment of jobs and recruitment of people to get to work in the workforce. It's been a change because with Georgia to our east, Florida south of us, Mississippi, even Louisiana, other states have been doing what they can over the years and have been trying to be at the top of the food chain in terms of finding new businesses to come to town and getting folks in those businesses to work in the state for. Have you had any contact? Have you been also watching other states to see what their approaches, how their approaches have changed in view of what Alabama is doing, sir?
Certainly. We look and monitor what other states do because we can sort of borrow some of their best practices, if you will, and then bring and incorporate those and ensure that it fits with what we're trying to do. But again, I'm just so excited that we're all sort of singing off the same sheet of music with the governor leading the charge with making sure that we have the right programs in place to make sure we satisfy what the greatest needs are.
Now, the governor and other members of the Alabama legislature have been putting together various plans to help with that. And from, again, the top of Alabama down to the coast and all points in between. Different sections call for different ideas when it comes to employment and what's needed. For instance, if you go down to Mobile, you have a port that is being improved. And with all the news of ports lately, that's big because it's one of the biggest ports in the country. So that's down south on the coast. Up north around Huntsville, you have technology principals that have come in and are set up near and around NASA. And in between, all kind of things from agriculture, farming to other businesses. It has to make you look at the future of Alabama and think, hey, working with lawmakers and then working with us, we can definitely put a big bow on this package.
I have to applaud the legislators and also the governor's office for putting together a series of bills that's going to help us improve the state's workforce. Working for Alabama, which has the Workforce Transformation Act included in it that talks about how we align our workforce programs to make sure that we're putting our foot in the right direction to improve the state workforce system. And so we're certainly moving in the right direction.
If people want to contact you, they can do so online, correct,
yes,
sir?
labor.alabama.gov.
We'll make sure to get that out for you. Secretary, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it and hope all continues to go well, sir. Thank you.
Thank you again for having me.
Yes, sir. At Capital Journal, we'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
The summer season is upon us, and many people are turning their attentions on vacations and getaways. But at the same time, they have to also stay cognizant of staying healthy, because many things are still out there that we need to pay attention to. To talk about that, joining us now is Dr. Scott Harris, Director of the Alabama Department of Public Health. Good to see you, Doctor.
Good to see you, Randy. Thanks for having me.
So yes, we are here summertime, although it's been feeling like summer for a few days now already.
Absolutely.
People are turning their attentions on the getaway, getting away from it all, resting, relaxing, letting off some steam. Still got to pay attention to what is out there so you don't get sick.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of ways to get sick. There are a lot of things that happen all year round. You know, here in Alabama, we have things that are particular to the summer months. You know, we live in the South. We live in a beautiful state. A lot of great things you can do outdoors. But you just mentioned the heat, for example. We're seeing heat, you know, earlier in the season than we're used to seeing right now. We want people to please remember to stay hydrated, stay cool. Please check on those folks who maybe can't do that for themselves. You know, small children, older people maybe who live alone. There are people who may not realize that they're getting dehydrated. Don't forget to look after your pets. You know, they have a hard time with heat as well. So heat is a really big issue right now, and certainly we want that to be at the forefront of people's minds, especially if they're going to be outdoors.
Because as you mentioned, there were some reports nationally about a serious heat advisory, or dare I say heat warning, on a majority of the United States of America. A heat dome, as they're saying, is going to be a big problem for a good 3/4 almost of the United States.
That's right. It's really hitting the northeastern United States right now. And you know, when you're from Alabama, you think, well, we're used to heat. You know, we live here, we know what heat's like, but I'm not sure we know what this kind of heat's like. We've had days around 100 over this past weekend for a couple of days in a row. That's not common for this time of year. We've got a week already before summer even officially starts where temperatures are over 90 degrees, mostly over 95 degrees for several days in a row. So that's a little bit unusual. We know people many times want to get in the water. They want to cool down. They engage in water sports and swimming and boating and so on. Just remember, normal water safety as well. We want people to wear a life jacket if you're going to be in a watercraft. Remember, alcohol and boating, don't go together very well. Make sure kids are attended if they're going to be swimming. And, if you swam last summer and then you really stopped doing that sport over the winter months, you probably can't swim quite as far here the first week of June or second week of June as you did at the end of last summer. So just remember that. Don't jump in and assume that you're just as able to swim as you were at the end of last summer.
Go slow about going swimming instead of just jumping literally head first in first.
Yeah, it's just common sense, but people are trying to have fun and they don't want to think about those things sometimes. So we would just encourage people to use common sense.
You just mentioned don't think about some things sometimes, or want to think about some things, and some things that people are dealing with. Aren't allergies still dealing with people and giving some people headaches too?
Sure. Allergies are just part of what we experience when we live in the southeastern United States. We have, great fauna, plant life everywhere. We have lots of waterways, and those are wonderful. But those combine to produce a lot of allergens for a lot of people. So again, just be cognizant of what you're doing. Some people use over-the-counter medicine. Some people need a lot more than that. But the more you're going to be outside, the more you're likely to have to deal with that problem if it's a problem for you.
You mentioned being outside. Something that you had talked about with me just a second ago before we started this interview was a program, correct me if I'm wrong, that Public Health is working on dealing with outdoor insects, if you will. problems that could be spread by bug bites and things of that nature.
Sure, that's right. The Alabama Senate this year had a joint resolution that identified June as a tick-borne illness awareness month. This was a resolution sponsored by Senator Melson. So we want people to remember that ticks are also part of everyday outdoor life when you live in Alabama. And in fact, that's true all year round, but more people are outdoors and spend longer periods of outdoors in the summer. So we do see an increase in a lot of tick-borne infections that happen in summer months. Things that people have heard about like Lyme disease or Rocky Mountain spotted fever, those happen here routinely. There are other diseases, the names of which may not be recognizable so easily to people, but we have a number of other tick-borne diseases that are here commonly. So remember, if you're camping, hiking, if you're in wooded areas, particularly even if you're golfing and you spend a lot of time in the rough like I do, you're going to be exposed to ticks, and so just look carefully, try to remove those in a clean fashion. If you have any concerns at all about that, then talk to your doctor.
And there are some steps, some precautions you can take if you will be in environment or areas like that you could be exposed to them.
Yeah, right. One of the simplest things to do is just be aware of the clothing that you're wearing. If you're going to spend time in wooded areas, try to cover, your legs in particular. Tuck your pants legs into your socks if you're going to be hiking out in the wilderness. And then look carefully for ticks when you undress, when you change clothes, just to see what's there. There are also repellents that are available. They work very well. Certainly a good idea to look into that, not just for ticks, but for mosquitoes as well. We have a few mosquito-borne illnesses in Alabama as well. They're not common, but they can sometimes be serious. But generally, mosquitoes are just annoying. They're a real nuisance and can really ruin your trip if you're spending a lot of time outdoors.
I was just about to ask you about that because the other day I was moving some potted plants for my mother around, and I was bombarded by mosquitoes, which took me off guard because I was thinking, is it this time of the year already? Yes, it is.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and as we get these summers that are sort of hotter with heat lasting longer, you just have more opportunity for mosquitoes to breed. So if you have standing water, like in a potted plant, for example, in a pool that you're not using, or anything that can contain water, mosquitoes are going to find that if you live in Alabama. They lay their eggs there. Those will hatch out. Mosquitoes usually never travel more than a couple hundred yards from where they hatch in their lifespan. So your mosquitoes on your property, they're probably your fault. They're probably your problem. And so just be cognizant of that. The best way to deal with mosquitoes is just to make sure you don't have standing water.
Someone or something else that lives in Alabama along with us humans are animals, i.e. cattle and other farm animals that people make their living with here because agriculture is huge in Alabama. So there are some concerns about some issues that could be happening with livestock, are there not, sir?
Yeah, that's right. So we're spending a good deal of time right now thinking about bird flu, or what we call a high pathogenic avian influenza. This is an illness that's transmitted from wild birds. Birds commonly have the flu, just like humans have the flu. They have their own strain of the flu. And so many times these wild birds can fly and land on a property somewhere and very commonly infect commercial poultry. Poultry farmers have been aware of bird flu for a long time. Unfortunately, it can really be devastating many times to people's livelihood. A whole flock, can sometimes have to be put down because of infection. But what's happened more recently, for the first time, as far as we know, is that dairy cattle in this country have become infected with bird flu as well. That virus has made a jump into a strain of animals that we've never seen before. We've known before it could spread to other birds. It even has spread to some other marine mammals. But for the first time, we've seen it in cattle. Now, we've not seen that in Alabama to this point, but it's probably inevitable. We don't think there's a high risk to the health of the public. We're not asking people to be alarmed about this or to be worried about that. It's simply something that we're monitoring. There have been, to this point, 3 people in this country, 1 in Texas and 2 in Michigan, who've been infected with bird flu from taking care of cattle. These are all people involved in the cattle business. And they've done well, they've done fine. But there are a lot of potential reasons that this could be an issue. These viruses do mutate, and they mutate pretty quickly. We would hate to have a bird flu virus that suddenly begins spreading the way that human influenza spreads. That could be a real big issue. So we've worked closely with Commissioner Pate and the Department of Agriculture to make sure farmers in Alabama know about this and are aware of what's going on. We're just right now just doing tracking and sort of surveillance and just trying to monitor to see if there are any issues. So far, so good in our state. Again, it's not a real concern for most people, but it potentially could be, and that's what we do in public health. We're trying to work in the background just to make sure that we're prepared in case something were to happen.
He's Dr. Scott Harris, Director of the Alabama Department of Public Health. We really appreciate you, sir, and thank you for spending some time with us.
Thank you, Randy. Good to be here.
Yes, sir. We'll talk to you next time.
All right. Sounds great.
And we'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
Birmingham native Erskine Hawkins was a prominent African-American trumpeter, bandleader, and composer during the big band era of the 1930s and 40s. His Erskine Hawkins Orchestra was a popular dance band in New York City, and with it he recorded the hit Tuxedo Junction, about a streetcar intersection on the Ensley-Fairfield line that was a center of nightlife for African Americans. Hawkins is a member of the Alabama Music and the Alabama Jazz Halls of Fame.
That's all for this edition of Capitol Journal. We thank you for joining us. Be sure to come back next week at the same time. Todd Stacy will be in this chair. From all of us at Alabama Public Television, thank you again for watching. Stay safe and be careful.